Hi everyone, it's been a minute since I've recorded my process to share with you all. Well, that's kind of a lie because I did record the process of my air piece from earlier this year, but I ended up scrapping that footage because I didn't think it would be very satisfying to watch. I had literally over 9 hours of material and it was so much painting and repainting, painting and repainting, and I don't know. I don't know what it would serve anyone to see. Anyway, I'm excited to share the process of this study with you, though. So, lately I've been having a little bit of an art crisis. Now, nothing I haven't dealt with before, of course, that's sort of the name of the game. But as I exist in my fifth month of attempting to be a full time artist, I'm not attempting, I guess, since I am doing it, regardless of the many struggles. But as I navigate these waters, I'm finding that I really want to improve my art so desperately and also streamline my process a bit. Something I've been frustrated with in my art lately is the way I catch myself over rendering. Something I should be able to call done will take another 2 to 4, sometimes more hours because I zoom into 100% and I look too closely and I start to criticize what I see. And what that does is it leads to me sharpening too many details and taking way too much time and just sometimes taking a little bit of the life out of the piece. And meanwhile, like, I look at other artists who play with texture and brushstrokes in their work and I absolutely adore it. So why can't I feel the same? Like, I don't think I'm necessarily going for like a super painterly style, but I would like to embrace some looseness in my work. Okay, tangent time. I have been deeply obsessed with Outlander lately. If you've been here for a while, you know that I used to primarily do fan art as like my main subject, usually books. And that's been one of my greatest inspirations. And I loved reading something or watching something and feeling so insanely inspired. And I honestly haven't had that in so long, which is a little sad. But watching Outlander, rewatching Outlander has sparked something in me that I truly cannot put into words. Part of me is like, am I okay? Do I need therapy? I should not be so obsessed with these characters and like eating it up every time they're separated and brought back together. But also, it's damn nice to feel something again, I guess. Um, but in all seriousness, I am so inspired by the compositions and cinematography and lighting and costumes and characters, and it's just been fun to dive into studies. So these studies, while absolutely indulgent, are already helping me, I think. By focusing on a screen cap from the show, I'm able to really analyze and interpret composition, character interaction and emotion, and subject hierarchy. You don't see it in this study so much, particularly since it's mostly a close up of the two characters themselves with vague, dreamy background vibes. They're in front of a window. For fans of the shows, this scene, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, is when Claire is learning about Jamie's scars on his back for the very first time. But in the first study I did from their wedding scene, I was really pushed to think about the levels of the piece and how to keep the focus on the two of them while dealing with all the other background elements. And as someone who hopes to get more book art work and hopefully do more things like covers and end pages, which typically have a bit more going on than a basic character drawing, I really want to improve on my backgrounds. Again, this study in particular isn't super helpful with that goal, but it has served other purposes indeed. My over-rendering, for instance, had to be tamed during this piece. Otherwise, I could spend 10 plus hours focusing on like their curls alone and meticulously capturing the lighting on each individual strand. So I was forced to really capture the essence here versus leaning entirely into detail. Something I've been working on is reminding myself of impression versus detail. What I mean by that is basically just trying to focus on letting certain things be left kind of to the mind to fully like interpret, and allowing for looser, softer brushstrokes here, and then sharpening other elements and honing in on other details in order to, again, keep the hierarchy of the piece. Here, that focus is their gazes and intensity, so that's where I want the most specificity. So you might have noticed I didn't go into this piece with a sketch. I didn't with the wedding scene study either, and full disclosure, I have already begun a third Outlander study. Obsessed, hello, I wasn't kidding. It's also from this scene, but different composition and lighting, and yeah, I'm excited to finish it. Also recording that process too, so maybe this will be my new thing. Anyway, I digress, but I also didn't sketch that one out either. And the reason for this is that I think it's beneficial for where I'm at as an artist and what my goals are with these studies to focus on shape language, interaction, and relationship. This helps me to, again, really focus on the composition versus fixating too heavily on, okay, now I must draw the nose and the eye and this strand of hair. I'll be honest though, with this study in particular, I was a bit too confident going in directly with shapes. It worked out in the end, but it was a lot of revamping, which you'll see. You'll notice I am lookifying and resizing, reshaping things a lot. So one of the things that I do when I'm doing these studies, right, is I use the navigator window in that top right corner of my Photoshop screen as a way to compare the reference to the study. So I just kind of, you notice I frequently click back and forth between the two, and when I do this, I'm watching the navigator window to see where things line up. At one point, I do end up copying the reference onto my study canvas so I can more directly line things up, because I did find myself struggling particularly with Jamie's proportions and angles. I think this ended up being like a deceptively difficult pose in that I thought, oh, it's just them looking at each other. That'll be super simple to paint in shapes. But I definitely got caught up in what I thought it was, simple profile angles, from actually seeing the shapes of things. And again, that relationship between these shapes. And so things are a bit more exaggerated from the camera angle and the positioning of Jamie's body. And so I got a little bit tripped up in like the middle of this process. I definitely could have benefited from sketching things out on this study, but again, it all worked out, I think. And since this isn't an anatomy study, I didn't mind having to rely on overlaying the reference briefly to just compare and contrast like directly. And ultimately, I am able to learn from this all anyway. So yeah. That's what studying is. It's figuring out how to translate things, and you just got to do what you got to do. I mostly aim to stay relatively zoomed out while working on these, and I'm trying to apply that to my other work as well these days. Obviously, I did want to zoom in a bit and get some good detail in their facial features, but even those were done with a careful attention to not getting fixated, because that's the name of my game. But I feel like both of these actors have such distinct faces that it's both easy and difficult to capture their likeness. It's easy in that they have super distinct profiles and proportions, I feel, but it's also tough because any tiny thing that's slightly off makes it feel wrong. So getting that balance is really crucial here. And I think if I had sketched this study out, I would have had a slightly more successful time at capturing their likeness faster than I did. Again, I think I got there in the end, but it was certainly a journey. This piece itself ended up taking about 3.5 hours total, which I'm pretty happy with. I think maybe if I didn't get so tripped up with Jamie's face and proportions in the middle of this process, I probably could have cut this down to between 2.5 to 3 hours instead, but that's okay. I'm honestly, I'm not working specifically for speed. While it's nice to be able to work quickly and with purpose, especially since when I'm working on commissions, for instance, I don't want to spend ages on one piece if I don't have to, because if you then do the math of what I'm getting paid and how long it took, sometimes that's a little sad. But anyway, overall, speed is not something that I think I need to maintain as an artist. Ultimately, under 4 hours for this piece isn't terrible timing, in my opinion. It's obviously a little faster since I'm doing faster of a process, since I'm pretty much doing a one-to-one like reference to study. Like the process for this is devoid of having to think of colors and composition and expression. So I've got half of the work kind of done for me, and then it's just up to me to interpret it and relay it. So if this were a commission where I'm not just directly like copying like a reference, it would probably be a bit more time to account for those other elements of creativity for sure. And anyway, this is about the time where I start to run out of things to say. Like sometimes I feel like I'm very bad at coming up with artistic things to talk about. And I think that this is the part where I say, if you are watching this, thank you. One, thank you for taking the time, because I do put a lot of like time and effort and energy into these videos when I do them. But if you are watching this, thank you. And if you ever have any questions about my process or like art in general, even, like, please always feel free to ask. I'm not like a trained artist. I didn't go to school for this. It's all just like my own, what I've learned and like my own experiences. And if you're watching this and you're a patron, like, please know that my messages are always open for you. I do genuinely enjoy creating these types of videos and having things to talk about and answer. So it's never a bother. I even had fun editing this one together. I ended up doing the video like editing compilation of clips itself in DaVinci Resolve, a free program on my MacBook Air. And then I put together sound recordings and captions over in Clipchamp on my PC. And honestly, this is just me saying this, not sponsored. Microsoft Clipchamp is kind of goated for some basic video editing. I edit all of my dumb clips of like video games when I play things with my friends in Clipchamp, but this is my first time using it for art editing, and I'm really happy with it. So shout out also to the caption feature for making adding captions so easy, because in the past when I've done voiceover, it's always been kind of difficult to find a way to efficiently add captions, also without having to like pay for extra stuff. So yeah, pretty pleased with this particular development, and I hope you're enjoying this video. So you might have noticed that I just put the reference directly onto my canvas. Admittedly, like, this isn't the most, for me and my stubbornness, like, this wasn't the most ideal thing to have to do, but I was finding myself having trouble directing my eyes and fully seeing what I needed to change just by using my little like navigator window, clicking back and forth. And I knew for a fact that there was something off with Jamie's angle and like the sizing of things, and so it helped me to just put the reference on a low opacity layer above my painting and see what I had to shift, like see what was and wasn't lining up and how I could shift it. And another way of working with reference, which I also do here, is sometimes tracing over the reference to determine the shapes. So I knew I was struggling with some of the elements of Jamie's face, and I just wanted to see sort of like where the jaw and the skull and like the ear would sort of line up. And again, it wasn't something I was picking up on visually, so it was helpful to just kind of see where those things line up anatomically and just try to essentially break down the skeletal shapes in the reference. All of this to say and remind you that using reference is super useful. Obviously, for me, I want to be able to see the shapes and determine the proportions without having to break down a reference every time. And more often than not, I can essentially do that. But it's also okay to use your reference and to break things down. And it can even be helpful to trace like the full thing, so you can get a feel for it, and then like after you trace it, kind of try to do it visually and like with what you learned. Like, remember that studying is just that. It's studying, it's learning, it's practicing. Studying art is a lot about like building a visual library and frame of reference for your work in the future, and sort of creating things that you can then reference from your own doing. And using a reference is how you do just that. And using it smartly is very important like to the learning curve. And again, it's important to think about what you're studying and what your focus is. So this study for me was more about the technical painting elements. Again, not over rendering, impression versus detail. Rather than like the anatomy, though obviously I wanted that to look correct. So here I'm like working smarter, not harder, when I was struggling with the anatomy, like using my tools, my reference to get to where I wanted to be. Now, if I am doing anatomy studies, those tend to be done in my sketchbook with my anatomy books and a pen or a pencil. And so like the way that I study anatomy is different than the way I study like painting itself, and like the way I study lighting is going to be different from the way I study like composition. Like, and I think that's important to acknowledge. Like, if you're also an artist, this is your reminder to like fine tune your studying if you want, and like really ask yourself what it is you're hoping to gain each time you do one. And obviously, like, you do you. But I think that if you direct your attention to a specific element of study, you might see desired results, like, potentially faster, or, like, pick up on things a little quicker, like, because you're focusing versus, like, seeing the whole forest instead of, like, a tree. Like, having more of a directed study instead of just, like, doing it in a vague sense. And again, like there is no right way or one size fits all. And if you just want to paint something, then you should do that. But with the way my brain works and the way I like to approach my art, thinking about what I hope to get out of these studies when I do them is really helpful for me. And also, I want them to look nice because I love the subject matter and I want to post them to social media and I want people to enjoy them. And that's also okay. As an artist, it is okay to want people to acknowledge your art and to see your art and to also appreciate your art. And I think that is a wonderful thing to remember. So at this point, I have pretty much settled on their faces feeling okay for me. I always question whether I truly achieve likeness, but I think in this instance, I'm overall quite happy with how they look. Likeness will always be something I struggle with, but when you get it right, it does feel pretty good. And I think I got pretty close on this piece by the end. But anyway, now it's time to think about what I have been putting off. The hair, the curls, the way the lighting plays with the hair. I remember feeling rather intimidated by this as I was going to work on it because I didn't fully know how I wanted to go about approaching it. It was definitely going to be a matter of finding moments of sharpness and then like the softer areas where the light filters through and like where I can play with sharper detail versus like a softer render. And I also knew as I was working on this piece that I wanted to play with some nice brush stroke textures as well. Brush stroke textures. That's kind of tough to say. You should give that a go. But I do have, like, I have so many cool texture brushes, right? Like, chat, I have so many brushes, like a low-key insane amount. I collect brushes and I collect reference packs. I am but a little artist dragon hoarding my little artist reference treasures. But in my brushes that I have collected over the years, I have so many wonderful textures and like different vibes of brushes and things to play with that I want to be bolder with incorporating them in my work. So I figured these studies are kind of a fun time to do that. Like finding little moments to add a special like brush of texture and letting that stand out instead of being afraid of people like noticing a brushstroke. Like I don't know why or how or when I developed this fear of like people seeing my art for being art. It was like when I started like zooming in on my art at 100% and noticing that something that I thought looked nice from farther away suddenly looks like art and like a painting. It made me like weirdly self-conscious. I was like, are people zooming in on my work? Are they seeing this? Are they like judging me. Am I a fraud? Am I an imposter? If I don't have an imposter syndrome breakdown at least like once a day, am I really living? Who's to say? Anyway, it's something I'm working towards, and I think ultimately it's about finding a nice balance between texture and like the crispy painting vibes, and then like a painterly touch. That I'm trying to accomplish. And I think with these studies, I could definitely get there in the end. And I'm excited for the journey. And maybe you're excited to be on this journey with me. I hope you are. I don't know. It felt kind of nice to do a video like this and just talk about my thoughts while I was working, or like while I watch myself back working. And to think of ways to articulate all that. I don't know. It's kind of fun, I think. And as we approach the end, the final couple of minutes of this video, as the final touches are being added and finished up, hello Nova, I just want to remind you, if you're a patron, if you're seeing this early access as a patron, thank you so much for the support. It means the world to me. Again, I am trying to do art full time, so any support of any kind means the world. And like whether that's being here on this video and watching and engaging and with my art that I share and letting me know if you like it, like that also means a ton. Yeah, just knowing that I have people by my side as I go through this journey, and knowing that there are so many of you who are ready and eager to support me is really, really cool. And I don't take that for granted. So thank you so much to every single patron. Again, if you're seeing this in early access, or if you're watching this later down the road when I finally release it to the public, thank you for enjoying it later on. And I hope you liked this video. I hope maybe you got something out of it, or enjoyed just hearing me ramble for like 22 minutes. Let me know in the comments what you think, or if you have any other types of videos that you would like to see from me in the future. And in the meantime, you can check out my other videos, or yeah, check out my work. I'm Art by Specially across the board on Instagram, Threads, YouTube, TikTok, Blue Sky, not Twitter because we got out of there. And yeah, thank you so much for being here and being a part of this.